Wow. It is so great to be back in Harrisburg for the home stretch of this election. I want to thank Rosalina for her introduction. Thank you all so much for being here. I want to thank your mayor. Thank you, Mayor Pappenfuse. Thank you, Governor Tom Wolf. Thank you, Senator Bob Casey. All the other elected officials and all of the people of Harrisburg and the larger area who want to see us win in November. Now, there are only 35 days left. Can you believe it? And we've got to get everybody you know registered to vote. Registration in Pennsylvania ends on October 11th. So if you aren't registered yet, or you know somebody who's not, I hope you will talk with them. And if you see that sign, those signs up there, iwillvote.com, you can actually go to that website, iwillvote.com, put your name in, put your address in, and make sure you're registered. Because we want everybody off the sidelines in this election, making sure that you're standing up for the kind of future that we want to have. Now, I'm closing this campaign the way that I started my career, fighting for kids and families. Standing up for fairness and opportunity, for justice, equality, taking on all those kitchen table issues that keep people up at night. And, you know, I want to go through and really bring people together around making sure that every family has the tools they need to get ahead and stay ahead. That is the basic bargain of America. And I want to be sure that we do everything we can in this campaign to draw the contrast between me and my opponent. I don't think you could have two more different people asking for your vote. Two more different visions, two more different sets of values and experiences. And we have to make sure that everybody understands what's at stake. Now, yesterday in Ohio, I laid out an aggressive agenda for taking on the kind of corporate fraud and abuse that we've seen from Wells Fargo and other corporations. I'm tired of it, aren't you? We're going to rewrite the rules. We're going to create more fairness. And by creating more fairness, we're going to give people more of a chance to have better jobs with rising incomes. That's the way it should work. We're going to empower those companies willing to take the high road, companies that invest in their employees, companies who play by the rules, companies who help to create good jobs right here in Pennsylvania. But for the others, we're going to hold them accountable. And that's a big difference in this election. You know, when we found out about how Wells Fargo was bullying employees to take advantage of customers, to put them into accounts that a lot of the customers didn't even know about, in order to extract fees that would go to their bottom line so they could end up with bigger bonuses. When we found out about that, luckily, we have a new watchdog agency in Washington, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And you know who's responsible for that? Senator Elizabeth Warren is responsible. And this new agency has actually recovered more than, I think, $11 billion for consumers who have been cheated and defrauded. So they were on the job, and they've gone after Wells Fargo. So some of those thousands of customers, we hope, will actually get their money back and will be made whole. And this is one of the agencies Donald Trump wants to eliminate. Now, the other thing we learned from Wells Fargo is that we still have to crack down on the big banks. We can't ever let Wall Street wreck Main Street again. And we put some good, strong regulations on the banks after the Great Recession. I think we can do some more, okay? I think we've got to be even tougher, and not just on the banks whose names you know, but on what I call the shadow banking sector, the hedge funds and other institutions that are flying under the radar screen but can do us a lot of damage. So I'm going to be even tougher on the Wall Street banks and other institutions. And what does Donald Trump wants to do? He wants to eliminate the rules we already have. Wants to get rid of the Consumer Protection Bureau, wants to get rid of the rules on Wall Street. Well, I'm telling you, we're tired of the cowboy culture on Wall Street that wrecked the economy, and we're not going to let it happen again, no matter what Donald Trump says. And you know, one of the biggest contributors to what happened was the housing crisis, remember? Donald Trump rooted for a housing collapse. Actually, back in 2006 and 7, he said, boy, I hope the housing market collapses because I'll make a lot of money that way. Now, who says that? Who wants that to happen? Somebody who is so out of touch with what's going on in America, living in his big tower, he has no idea what's happening. And you know, I'm tired of American companies shipping jobs overseas. So we're going to make them give back any tax breaks they've ever gotten. If they want to move jobs out of America, they're going to have to pay an exit tax if they think that's what they want to do. But again, Donald Trump sees it differently. He actually outsourced jobs to 12 different countries. And so when I heard him say that the first time, that, well, yeah, he couldn't find anybody in America to make clothes or furniture. I said, well, we're going to start a website, and we're going to put on that website all the companies we know of here in Pennsylvania and Ohio and Michigan and Colorado and Virginia and across the country who could make everything that Donald Trump sells. I mean, look, if you want to make America great again, don't you think you should have jobs in America that make Americans' lives better? But this is the pattern with Donald Trump. I mean, really, if you look at his business record, which is his main claim to be President of the United States, right? He says he wants to do for America what he did for business. Well, let's compare. This is a man who we now know paid no taxes. That's what we suspected, but until some of his tax returns were made public, we couldn't prove it. And he claimed that he lost $1 billion in the casino business. I mean, I mean, a gentleman down here is yelling, the House always wins. I mean, who loses money running a casino besides Donald Trump? I don't know that that's much of a credential, but it's what he did and how he did it that is especially concerning, because he not only has taken bankruptcy numerous times in his businesses, but he has stiffed employees. I'm talking painters and plumbers and dishwashers. He has refused to pay small businesses that had a contract with him. And I've met some of these people, and I take it really personally. You know, my dad, born up in Scranton, my grandfather was a factory worker. And my dad started a small business when he got out of the Navy after World War II, and he worked really hard. He printed drapery fabric. So he'd get big bolts of fabric. He had a small printing plant. It was just, you know, a long room, no natural light. And he would take the fabric and he'd roll it out on the table, and then he would take a silk screen. You ever seen a silk screen? He would take a silk screen. He'd start at one end of the table. He'd put it down. He'd pour the paint in. He'd take the squeegee. He'd go across. He'd lift it up. He'd go all the way down to the end of one table, then he'd cross over to the second table, and if he needed to add a second color, he would do the same. And then when he finished, he would load the fabric up in his car, and he would take it to the customer who had ordered it. He worked hard. I helped him out from time to time, and he made a good middle-class life for my family. And I'll tell you what, I am just so grateful he never got a contract from Donald Trump, because I don't know what we would have done. And I want to contrast his story because he went bankrupt a few times, says he lost $1 billion, ruined thousands of people's lives and businesses. I want to contrast his business history with the history of your governor, Tom Wolf. And I'll tell you what, Tom Wolf, his family started a business, the Wolf Organization. They worked really hard. Then he and his cousins took it over. And then eventually they sold out. And Tom went into government. And then he learned that the business that had been at the heart of his family was on the verge of bankruptcy under the new owners. Now, he didn't have any continuing responsibility. He'd sold it. But he cared about the people who worked there. He cared about their families and their futures. So he went back. He went back to make sure that company did not go into bankruptcy and that the workers and the community were not going to be hurt. So there are different experiences in business. People who work hard, like my dad, people who are part of a great family business and still feel an obligation to the employees who made it successful. Those are the kinds of businesses we want in America, and we want to lift them up and give them the opportunity to be as successful as possible. But we're not going to let companies that outsource jobs, companies that take bankruptcy, companies that strip employees of their rights, their pensions, go to a low-wage economy. We're not going to stand by and watch that happen. And we are not going to put up with the kind of gaming that the super wealthy and corporations have done in the tax system. We are going to raise taxes on the wealthy and close loopholes for corporations to make investments in growing our economy. Now, when it came out that Trump had lost $1 billion, some of his Supporters said, well, that just shows what a genius he is. Well, I thought to myself, I guess it does take some sort of genius to lose $1 billion. I'm not quite sure that's what I'd call it. We need to call it for what it is. Trump took on risks that devastated his businesses, his employees, the people who were contractors, and the larger community in Atlantic City, all while continuing to live like a billionaire. Think what could happen if he were entrusted with the awesome responsibilities of being President of the United States and Commander-in-Chief. The loser would be our entire country. And then yesterday we learned that here in Pennsylvania and Ohio and a few other states, there have been a lot of challenges for our steel workers and our steel mills because China is dumping steel and aluminum into the American market below the cost of production. I took that on when I was in the Senate, standing up for steel workers and steel producers in New York. I will take that on as your president. I am sick of people taking advantage of our markets, our consumers, our businesses. We're going to ramp up enforcement. We're going to throw the book at China and anyone else who does that. But just yesterday, a story came out suggesting that for all his tough talk, and I've listened to it. He's traveled across Pennsylvania, a place that I spent a lot of time in because we went to Scranton every single summer and lots of holidays. And my dad and my brother went to Penn State, and we have loved coming to this state. So I've listened to Donald as he's bashed China. You heard him. Oh, he's going to really take on China. Well, we found out yesterday that he has been buying cheap Chinese aluminum and steel. Not buying here in Pennsylvania, not supporting our workers, but supporting the Chinese. These stories keep coming out, don't they? And everyone makes the same point. They add up to clearly demonstrating that Donald Trump is the poster boy for so much of what is wrong in our economy. Broken, that needs to be fixed. The unfair rules that favor those at the top. He embodies the risky behavior that crashed our economy, that brought us the Great Recession, the quick buck culture that still rules too many corporate boardrooms, and the deck that seems always to be stacked for those at the top. And he doesn't even know how wrong he is. When I challenged him at the debate, and did you see the debate last Monday? So you saw it when I suggested that one of the reasons he didn't want to reveal his tax returns is because he might not have paid any taxes, right? And when I pointed that out, he basically said, well, that made him smart. Well, think about it this way. That makes all the rest of us dumb. We've done our duty. You can go look at 40 years of tax returns from my husband and me, and everybody else for the last 40 years who's been a candidate for president. Only Donald Trump has refused to release his tax returns. And if I'm so fortunate enough as to be your president, we're going to pass a law that if you're a presidential nominee, you're going to have to release your tax returns. But there was something else in that answer which really bothered me. He thinks it's smart to give 0 to our military, 0 to our vets, 0 to health and education. Can you imagine? I mean, he's called our military a disaster. He knows nothing about the sacrifice and service of the men and women who wear the uniform of our country. Just yesterday, he said some very troubling things about post-traumatic stress. Again, showing his insensitivity and his ignorance about a condition that affects a lot of very brave and, yes, strong men and women who have served America. It's a little difficult even coming up with answers to everything he says, because every day it's something else, which shows without a doubt that he is unqualified and unfit to be president and commander-in-chief of our country. But I know that you know people who are thinking about voting for him, right? So I am respectfully asking you to stage an intervention before it's too late. No matter what the person you know cares about, you can go directly to the internet and you can show your friend that probably Trump is absolutely on the other side, or what he said is not accurate, or that he is stirring up so much vitriol. He is setting Americans against each other. You know, there are 3 big challenges for the next president. We got to get the economy working for everybody, not just those at the top. And I have a set of plans to do that. And I am confident we're going to make that happen with new jobs and rising incomes. We're going to make it fairer, too, because we've got to make sure the rewards of the economy reach everybody, not just the privileged few, and that everybody feels that they're getting ahead and staying ahead. Now, part of that is a lot of the other issues that I've been talking about. Tim Kaine and I actually put a book out. It's called Stronger Together. And we laid out what we want to do to make college affordable and help you pay down your student debt and raise the minimum wage and guarantee equal pay for women's work. We also said we want more companies to share their profits with their employees who helped to make them profitable in the first place. Now, some of you know who Mark Cuban is, right? Yeah. So he endorsed me last summer in Pittsburgh, and I was really grateful because, you know, he's a real billionaire. And he said, look, he's always shared profits. And when he sold his first company, he shared the profits of the sale and helped to make 300 millionaires. From executives to secretaries to security people. That's what I want to see in America. That's the kind of leadership we need to be promoting in our country, because we are all stronger together. And I also am absolutely committed to keeping America safe. There is nothing more important to go after and defeat terrorism, to lead the world with strength and steadiness. And I know how to do that, and I will do that. And I've laid out the plans for what it will take to do that. All Donald will say is that he has a secret plan to defeat ISIS. And you know, the secret is he has no plan. But in fact, he's made that even harder by the way that he's insulted everybody. Insulted our allies, insulted majority Muslim countries that we need to be partnering with to defeat ISIS, saying we should pull out of NATO, even going so far as to say he didn't care if other countries got nuclear weapons. That is just beyond comprehension. We have worked so hard, Democrats and Republicans together, ever since the dawn of the atomic age, to make sure that we didn't permit more countries. We kept it to a minimum. We were in arms control agreements. I helped to negotiate one when I was Secretary of State with Russia, that we did everything we could to keep track of and keep nuclear materials out of the hands of bad guys, including terrorists. And then, of course, we've got to do more to bring our country together after this election. We can't permit the kind of hateful rhetoric that we've seen too much of. I think our diversity is one of our strongest assets in America. And I will do everything I can to bring people together. That's what I did as First Lady, as a Senator, as Secretary of State, trying to find common ground. You know, that's how I helped to create the Children's Health Insurance Program with Republicans and Democrats that takes care of 8 million kids. It's how I worked with a Republican mayor